Good morning. It is Wednesday, March 19th, 9-ish. We have a very packed day today. And are planning to be relieved of our responsibility to be on the floor. So that we can, because it's anticipated to go for 3 hours. And we have a bunch scheduled for this afternoon. And so right now, as of this moment, the plan is for us to go to the floor. The bill that Rep. Burkhart is reporting is sort of first on the calendar. That's the word. Will be first on the calendar ideally, and then we will all come back here after that. If anyone has any challenges with that, please let me know around lunchtime. And we have a few tiny floor amendments for various typos that have been found since the bills left us that we're going to scatter throughout the morning. And it's also possible that we are going to get a new version of the budget adjustment bill at some point today and need to act quickly on that. So it'll be a great day. I hope we can all do our work together. So first up on the calendar, we have H321, an amendment from Representative Higley. Mark, do you mind just telling us about it?
As everybody looked at it, it's just a simple word change, deleting an and. It's like Ledge Council found a mistake and corrected it. So that's that simple.
Typo.
Sorry.
A typo.
Well, just
It's not quite, I think it was that there was something was changed to remove an and in one section and they forgot to remove it in the second section.
there's a list of things. And they had an and in there. It should have been removed. Like you said.
Posted under committee.
Thank you.
Right.
Does anyone have any questions or concerns? Looks good to do a straw poll on that. Okay, all those in favor of the amendment? All those opposed? Great, I would say that was 10-0-1. Thank you. Thank you, Mark. And now we have H479. Cameron, can you join us and share those amendments with us? And then we're gonna try to hear from James Duffy, but I think there was a mud situation. And so he's a little late.
That's him here.
That's as much as I know.
Where does he live? On my road.
Good morning.
Morning. Morning.
For the record, Cameron Wood, Office of Legislative Counsel. I share my screen and walk through a proposed amendment to page 479. Is that good? Okay. H479, this is an act related to housing. This is the committee bill that came out of House General and Housing, and we did a walkthrough on Friday and you all took additional testimony yesterday. This amendment is 4 instances of amendment. The first one here is just technical, and it's more something I would like to do to clean up one of the sections that was in the underlying bill that came out of House General. So what this amendment would do would be to strike section 6 in its entirety and insert a new section 6. And if you all recall, you took testimony on this yesterday. This is the section related to the tax credits for affordable housing for VHFA. The only change here is going to be on page 3. So everything else leading up to this is the same. And this is related to the down payment assistance program. And if you recall, in the underlying bill, there was a whole new section, subdivision 3 here, which repeated everything in subdivision 2, except extended the program out to 2031. I drafted that very quickly previously to add a new subdivision, but after discussion with people in our office, it doesn't really make sense since we're just extending the years out to have an entirely new subdivision that repeats all of the same language. It's the same program. So I've removed that, and all we're doing is just extending out the program here. So there's really no substantive change. Just wanted you to be aware. The second amendment, we're adding a new section 6A into the bill. And as you can see here, we're striking out language. Because if you recall, the down payment assistance program has this end date, which is 2031. We're extending it for another 5 years. The other change in this is to add the first generation home buyer and add tax credits for that program. That does not have an end date as the bill came out of House General and Housing. What this amendment would do is it would remove that program. You would basically sunset that program 5 years out. And so what this section 6A that you're adding, as you can see, we're striking the language in the first generation home buyer. So the definition and then the program language here. And then we're going to amend the effective date section to make this effective July of 2030, July 1, 2030. So with fiscal year 30.
And for tax credits like this is what we do. And then it gives us a chance to check in on the tax credits, see if it's doing what we want it to do, and then often move the sunset out as we're doing in the other.
So that is the second instance of amendment.
Thank you for flagging that, Jordan.
The third instance, we're on page 5 now. So the third and fourth here. I'm going to start with the fourth instance because that's just what I said. We're changing the effective date. And as you can see, we're adding this subdivision 2. We're breaking the effective date out into a sub 1 and 2. And this is where you see section 6A, we're repealing the first gen home buyer tax credit, takes effect July 1, 2030. That's the only change in the effective date section. So the last amendment, it's listed as the third instance here, is striking section 16 in its entirety and inserting a deleted. So you are striking section 16, which is the section related to the municipal authority to implement a 1% tax on short-term rentals. So we're just removing that section from the bill and putting a deleted, so we do not have to then renumber everything. And that is the amendment.
Anyone have any? Yeah.
Kim, you said so after we delete that section 16, we got to renumber the rest of it all the way down?
We do not. That's why, as you can see, what I'm doing is just inserting a deleted instead of having to then renumber everything.
Yep.
It's easier for us that way. Because if we renumbered everything, it would then cause issues with your fourth instance of amendment because it would be a different section number, et cetera. So we're just adding a deleted there.
I see. Yep.
Yeah, one thing, following the discussion about the tax credits for both the down payment assistance and also the first generation home buyers, followed up with Mark Holland from VHFA and trying to determine 2 things. One is that the extension of this isn't for Cam, so it's for committee discussion. So never mind. Sorry, Cam.
I was listening.
You're good.
Anyone have any other questions for Cameron? So this is essentially 2 amendments, but it looks like lots of other pieces. Thank
You're
you.
adding the sunset, you're removing the short-term rental section. That is the substantive 2 pieces of this amendment.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
And folks, the downtown and village center tax credit was in this bill at some point long before it came to us. And then it was not in the bill for reasons that are also not entirely clear. It is going to be in a bill that comes over from the Senate, and we will discuss it then. It's one of those pieces of language that sometimes is in a commerce bill and sometimes is in a housing bill. And on the House side, it wasn't in either, and I don't know how purposeful that was or not, but it's sort of a little too late for us to be shoving it into things. So we will pick it up when it comes over from the Senate. Any committee discussion on those 2 amendments?
This might be where it's
Yeah.
appropriate. Yeah. So we had a discussion about the 2 different tax credit programs and what Moore Collins presented to us yesterday, and I thought about it a little bit more afterwards, is that the reason there was originally that down payment assistance program was intended to sunset and go away because they would have enough money from the repayment of those second home loan, the silent mortgages, silent mortgages, that they would be able to fund future programs. But a couple of things happened when they increased the amount of the grant from the $5,000 up to $10,000. And so they were eating into how much they were able to actually allocate from the ones that were being paid back. And also the pandemic happened. So the amount of in 22 and 23 shows a graph of how much revenue they got from the repayment of those loans. And that's been on the decline. So they don't have as much money coming in order to make those available. That was one. That's why she explained that they needed the money now because they're running out of money. And the second one was the grant program. Because it's a grant, it's not a loan that gets repaid. So she was saying this never really replenishes the tank. The money doesn't ever come back. So that's why she was looking for it to be a more permanent source of funding. This doesn't mean it can't be a permanent source of funding, but we just have to come back to the table and renew it ourselves. That's my, just for tax credit policy, it made sense to go back and say, let's make sure we look at this in 5 years. Makes sense.
Okay. Are folks feeling ready to vote on the amendment in the bill?
I just got an email from James Duffy.
Oh, gosh, I'm so sorry. I totally forgot about you testifying. Please come join us in the fair. Thank you.
Morning. For the record, James Duffy from Joint Fiscal Office. Chair, I was in.
I'm glad you made it here. We heard you were having. You had
As well. Yes, thank you.
you.
Chair, I received the email, the amendment from Socha on my way in regarding the sunset of tax credits. I also understand there was a question about the comparison between the bill as before the committee and the FY26 governor's recommendations. Is there any preference for the committee as to what that? I want eyes on the amendment as I'm walking through it, but I'll start with just the quick FY26 GovRec comparison. So if committee members care to pull up the fiscal note, my suggestion for running through this comparison would be to look at table 1 that's contained on page 2. That summarizes the appropriations from this bill. Just to summarize, there is essentially approximately $25.1 million additional appropriation contained in this bill above what was contained in the FY26 governor's recommended housing items. There are some countervailing forces under the hood there that is mostly driven by a $25 million appropriation to VHCB beyond the base that's contained in the governor's recommended budget. However, there are some additional smaller increases and smaller decreases happening within that $25.1 million figure. So I just figured I would quickly run through them one by one if that is amenable to the chair.
It is.
Okay, good.
Great. So if you have the fiscal note in front of you in table 1, you'll see there's 15,000 for a universal design study committee and 250,000 to VHFA for an offsite construction report. These are both appropriations that were not contained in the FY26 governor's recommended budget. Both the 3 classified positions and the 2 limited service positions appropriated to the Department of Housing and Community Development in section 20 of the bill were also contained in the FY26 governor's recommended budget. The FY26 governor's recommended budget contained $9.1 million for the Infrastructure Sustainability Fund at the Vermont Bond Bank. You'll notice this amount is $15 million in the budget in the proposed bill in front of you. So that represents a $5.9 million increase in the bill over the FY26 GovRec. The following items, the mobile home improvement program, $2 million is the same between the FY26 GovRec and this bill. Another large difference, or probably the second largest difference contained between these two, is the FY26 governor's recommended budget had proposed $30 million for the middle income home ownership development program and rental housing revolving loan fund. You'll see this under DHCD section 21 in the table. So the GovRec was $30 million, about $15 million to each. This bill would appropriate a total of $20 million to both programs. That represents a $10 million decrease in this bill from what the administration had proposed. Next, the Rental Housing Improvement Program, VHIP, in the table. The $4 million appropriation is the same in this bill as what was recommended in the administration's FY26 proposal. And then here's that big item driving the difference that I alluded to earlier. This bill would appropriate $25 million to the Vermont Housing and Conservation Board above base, whereas the FY26 governor's recommended budget had appropriated just base to the HCB. So that's the main driver of the $25.1 million difference between these proposals. And then finally, there are a variety of sort of smaller programs and smaller appropriations contained in this bill, not contained in the governor's recommended budget. For these, you'll want to go to page 3 of this note, page 4, the final page. Under grants and non-governmental housing service providers, there are various grants and one-time appropriations contained in this section that were not within the FY26 governor's recommended budget. That includes the $500,000 to grant to NeighborWorks America, $235,000 to grant to Home Share Vermont, $400,000 to grant to the Agency of Human Services to grant to the Support and Services at Home pilot program. Additionally, there's a total of $821,500 appropriated here to both Department of Labor and the Vermont Department of to the Department of Labor and the Vermont State Colleges for workforce development programs. Neither of those appropriations were contained in the FY26 governor's recommended budget. And then finally, I'll just note that the final 2 items mentioned on page 4 here, the $300,000 appropriation to Department of Health and $325,000 for individuals entering certified recovery residences, that represents a $625,000 appropriation for recovery residences. Now, the governor's recommended FY26 budget had included $1.2 million for recovery residences. This bill before you now contains $625,000. So there's a difference there, but I should note that there is a separate bill from the a separate bill coming out of, I believe, the Human Services Committee, whose name I'm slightly mispronouncing, that makes an appropriation for the same purpose from the opioid abatement fund. And so while there's a difference between those 2 appropriations between the FY26 GovRec and the bill before you now, my understanding is there's some interplay between 2 bills that will be coming before the Appropriations Committee for Resident Recovery Services. So all that just, top line number, $25.1 million greater in the bill before you now than the FY26 governor's recommended. Any specific questions on the specific drivers there of the difference?
Yeah, I heard on the news today of the Budget Adjustment Act that they were offering to the governor to do what he wanted on one side, but to agree to make a big appropriation to the homeless. Is that what this is? The 21 million?
No, no representative. Thank you for that question. But this is everything in this bill is specifically for the fiscal year 26 budget. Whereas
It's in the budget, I see.
yes,
Okay.
yes.
All right.
But we are getting budget adjustment later.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Sure, I will pull up my email so I can have the amendment in front of the committee.
I imagine, yes. Thank you. And we are happy to wait for a finished fiscal note when it's ready for the floor. It has to go to appropriations. We know that.
Sure. Yes, I will be putting together an updated fiscal note this morning to incorporate this amendment. But if you'd like to, I can
Yeah, sure.
look at it. And if there are any
If
questions.
you don't mind, that's fine, but I also don't want you to do your job on the fly if you don't have to, so.
And Chair, just to clarify the intent of this amendment.
The two things are we remove the short-term rental tax and put a sunset on the tax credit that didn't have a sunset.
Understood. So the short-term rental tax provision is not expected by JFO to have an impact on the fiscal impact of this bill because those revenues will all go to municipalities. Any fiscal impact of the state would be limited to the extent to which this additional cost might reduce consumer demand for short-term rentals in the state of Vermont. JFO's understanding from previous investigations of this is that demand for these short-term rentals is quite strong and pretty inelastic to additional fees of that nature. So I wouldn't expect a change to the fiscal note from that. And then as for the sunset of the first generation first-time home buyer program, would this, I apologize to me if it's appropriate that I clarify, would this be a sunset after 5 fiscal years?
Yeah.
Great. So in that case, we would just see the cost of kind of that 5-year cost schedule contained in the fiscal note, plateau at the 5-year mark, and then decrease by $500,000 each year from then on out as those $250,000 tax credits between the two programs are taken out of circulation. So $250K would be taken out of the down payment assistance program and the first generation program each fiscal year, down by $500,000 each year until they taper to zero. But I'll have an updated fiscal note for the committee today.
I think what you had shared in your graph yesterday, it showed the 1,250,000 for the first generation home buyer. But your graph only went out so many years. What it didn't show is after that, it would still stay the same at $1,250,000 in
Yes.
perpetuity unless we had the sunset.
That's correct.
Okay. Yeah.
Any other questions for me? Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Thanks for making it to work today. Wild times we're living.
Yeah.
Okay, folks, any other questions? Anyone need anything on this bill?
I don't believe so. Are we gonna have the opportunity to look at that updated fiscal note prior to the vote or?
No, we're not.
And I guess, you know, if we want an explanation as you suggested beforehand, I certainly appreciate removing the short-term rentals provision. That was pretty stark from what we had testimony from the tax department. But I will be voting no just because of the additional 25 million, and it probably won't be 25 million completely in the new joint fiscal note, but the governor's recommend, so voting no for those reasons. But I appreciate again, the short-term rental piece coming out, a lot of discussion around that.
We can make a motion and then have a discussion too. We're going in a little bit. Sorry. Can someone please make a motion?
I would move that we amend the bill that's presented to us. Bill number 479 as presented to us this morning by Legislative Council.
And you're moving that we amend it?
That we amended, yes.
Okay, great. Representative Kimball moves that we amend H 479. Any discussion on that? Yes.
Where are we getting that 21 million?
So I think the amendment is not. The amendment has nothing to do with the 21 million, so,
Okay, I couldn't see the fiscal note on my
okay.
screen at all, so I don't know
The
that.
amendment has no fiscal cost for the next 5 years and reduces costs after 5 years.
But we are,
That's the new fiscal
The new,
that James is gonna prepare later on. The existing ones for the bill.
the 21 million above. My guess is that this bill is going to go to the appropriations committee and they are going to slice the appropriations in half when it gets there, but that is not our job to do. That is their job to do.
I had a discussion with Representative Harrison this morning.
He's on it.
all
So,
right.
yeah, I'm comfortable with this bill.
He is comfortable, is that?
Oh, yes.
You are, yeah, okay,
Don't know what they're gonna do.
okay,
And it did come out of House General 1010 for whatever that's worth to people.
okay. Turn my hearing aid up.
But Carolyn, Carolyn, the motion on the floor is about the amendment.
Okay, thank you, that's helpful.
Okay, any discussion on the amendment? Okay, If you could please call the roll on the amendment.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Representative Brannigan on the amendment.
Yes.
Representative Burkhart, that's me, votes yes. Representative Feltes.
Yes.
Representative Higley.
No.
Representative Holcomb.
Yes.
Representative Kimball.
Yes.
Representative Maslin.
Yep.
Representative Odie. Representative Wazazak.
Yes.
Representative Canfield.
Yes.
And Representative Kornheiser.
Yes.
And the amendment passes 10 to 1 to 0.
Thank you. And then a motion on the bill as amended.
I would move that we find 479 favorable. Yeah.
Really?
As amended.
Any discussion of the bill?
So is this where the 21 million is?
Indeed it is.
And do we know how we're paying for it? Where that?
I imagine that the bill is going to be amended to remove some of the spending in it when it gets to appropriations. And I imagine that you also are under that assumption? Yes. But we can't promise anything.
Why are we putting it in? You know, it's gonna get stripped out.
We didn't put it in. The House General Committee put it in. We have not added any spending. We have just removed the potential for two taxes in the future.
Okay.
Yes, Representative Feltes.
I was just gonna clarify, it's money going to VHCB, which obviously we question where it comes from. But, and it's above the base of what they're already getting.
Right.
But it's for housing purposes, coming from the housing committee as a recommendation.
Yes, I'm surprised the governor doesn't support this, or he didn't think of it, didn't think of doing it.
Well, I don't know, there may be something else in the budget itself that covers some of this, although, no, I'm sure our representative would have mentioned that. It's, I think, just additional money for housing efforts that the housing committee felt.
Anyone, any further discussion? Okay, if you could please call the roll. Thank you.
Sure. Representative Brannigan.
Yes.
Representative Burkhart votes yes. Representative Feltes.
Yes.
Representative Higley.
No.
Representative Holcomb.
Yes.
Representative Kimball.
Yes.
Representative Maslin.
Yep.
Representative Odie. Yes. Representative Wazazak.
Yes.
Representative Canfield.
Yes.
And Representative Kornheiser.
Yes.
And the bill passes a committee favorable of amendments 10 to 1 to 0.
Thank you. If you could say 10-1-0 without the twos, it
Okay.
would help.
Oh,
My brain
I'm sorry.
is-
Oh, sorry.
Okay.
Yeah. Sorry.
Oh, yeah, I didn't think of that.
I'm used to reporting soccer scores, not. Okay.
Thank you.
Noted. So I have a quick question. When we have an amendment, and now that we've got this down to one sheet, do we put where it says the draft? Is that the draft of the amendment, the time for the amendment? Okay, great.
Educate me just about general process. Did this bill also go to the education committee?
I don't think so. Yes.
I just need to explain a little bit too. So I understand that, this is a money committee or a tax committee. I've been on policy committees and not money committees, but a lot of times, not always, even on a policy committee, I've had my no votes or my concerns based on the money.
Yeah.
So in other words, I'm in a sense sometimes doing the reverse here. So I just hope that people can appreciate my perspective.
Absolutely. I also think that being the second to last stop is a funny thing, especially for some folks who have been the last stop before. Yeah. So, yeah. Thank you, everyone, for your work on that. Thank you, Cam. Okay.
I think it helps just on that point.
Mhm.
I see my votes are all about where the money comes from, not what's actually in the bill.
That is a way that a lot of people make those decisions in here. Okay. New bill. Deep breath, clear the brains. We have a tiny floor amendment to H 243. Rick, can you join us?
Good morning.
Good morning.
Rick Sagal, Office of Legislative Counsel. I'm sorry to bother you all with this. This is not a huge,
We're the second technical floor amendment we've done today, so don't you worry about it.
so I have, this is a floor amendment that is sponsored by Rep. Burkhart of this committee and Rep. Cooper of the Commerce Committee. So Rep. Cooper is doing the floor report for House Commerce on this bill, and he noticed a mistake that I did not catch. Somewhat embarrassing, but he caught it thankfully. And I'll show you what that is in a second. Here's the amendment. Basically, it keeps what Ways and Means did, which if you don't recall, you got the fee changes in this bill. It was the business organizations. David Hall came in and talked to you about the different fees. So that has not changed. What this amendment will do is basically striking out a duplicative section that was in the amendment mistakenly by myself. So this is the amendment. And let me show you. I'm gonna stop sharing this one. Start sharing the underlying report of this committee. So this is draft 2.2, which is what you voted out, I believe 1100. There are two sections, 1655, one at the top of page 29, which is a designation of agent for service of process, change resignation. You may remember this bill. A lot of the updates were about this, about agents for service of process, ensuring that the Secretary of State's office is able to know who a business appoints as their agent. There were some things that need to be cleared up in this bill. So that's why this language is here. However, at the bottom of page 30, you will see another 1655, which is Secretary of State as agent for service of process. This is a duplicative section. It's actually duplicative of 1656, which is after 1655. So the way to fix this is I struck this section here, just this one here. So basically on your draft 2.2, you would see the 1655 removed, and we would just start with this 1656 as the next statute. Any questions about that technical amendment? Go ahead, Madam Chair.
Any other questions? Great. Thank you very much, Rick.
Thank you.
Nope,
Oh,
nope, not on that one. So
243.
over here. Right there.
243, yeah. Madam Chair, I would move
Nope,
that.
there. Yep,
Yeah,
there.
I would move that we find the amendment to H 243 as presented by Legislative Council this morning, find it favorable.
Just a shuffle, yeah. We don't need a motion. Thank you so much.
So good.
For your whispering. Okay, we're gonna need all of us for this day to glide. All in favor of this delightful floor amendment? All opposed?
That's right, it's 4.
Representative Feltus, are you opposed to the floor?
No,
amendment?
no, I'm sorry, I just didn't.
It's my file. Great. I was sort of excited for the twist, but okay.
It was 1100.
It is, thank you. Okay, wonderful. Thank you, Rick.
Thank you.
Like, hey, you remove that and.
Team, we have earned ourselves a brief break.
Till 9:45.
Till